everyone, welcome to our very first Forget-Me-Not Sewing Bees video. Hope you're going to enjoy it. April and I thought it might be quite nice, since we're on the run up to Easter, to have a go at making these. So we've got a Henrietta for you and her chicks Charlie and Chester. In order to make them, you need small bits of fabric, and we thought it was something that you might enjoy doing. Anyway, for the next bit I'm going to have to stand up, so here we go. So to make these you need 2 squares of fabric. For Henrietta I started off with a 5-inch square. I went down ½ inch for Charlie, so he's a 4.5-inch square, and Chester was 4-inch square. To make your crown, for this one I'm going to just use some felt, and I cut that into a simple shape that I thought represented a crown, and then I did a triangle for the beak. For the original Henrietta I used a contrast fabric and just stitched a triangular shape, and for her crown I folded a rectangle of material in half and then snipped into it to create this sort of frayed effect. April came up with this really brilliant idea, which is really lovely, and I actually used it on Charlie, the pincushion one. So get a double piece of fabric, draw around it your chosen shape, stitch very close to the edge, and then turn it through. And just before you turn it through, just snip carefully into those corners there, just to make it easier to turn through. And once you've turned it through, just add a little bit of stuffing and pop a pin in to hold it shut. That would then be positioned on top of one of your squares, and eventually it will get sandwiched together to hold it in place. I'm going to go back to my felt and just lay that in place. Now I'm working on my square board because I thought this would be easy for you to see and judge the positioning of these felt pieces. Take your second layer, second square, and lay it right sides together. And this now needs pinning, and you need to pin it on 3 edges, making sure you're going through the felt shapes so that they're held and trapped in place. And just a few pins. We're doing a 1/4 inch seam all the way around, except for one edge, and the edge you leave open is the edge that's opposite to where the beak would have been. Take that to your sewing machine, stitch all the way around, and in true Blue Peter fashion, here is one I made earlier. This time I've stitched it in black just so that you could see the distance, and I also just trimmed a little bit off at the corners to make the next stage a little bit easier. So we turn that through, and you'll see Henrietta begins to emerge. Here she is. And if you've got a pokey stick, you might need to just push the corners out a little bit, or a sharp pair of scissors just to get into those corners, but just be careful that you poke them through gently. So that gives you that effect. Now, when Henrietta is made, we're looking to do something like that. So you can see how her shape is formed. And if many of you did the Rodney reindeer at Christmas, that's along the same lines, or if you did the humbug purse, that also followed this same principle. Now before we put the stuffing in, just gently press down a 1/4 inch turning, just finger press it down just to hold it in place, because this will make the next stage easier when you come to actually have to seal up the opening. Have some stuffing at the ready and pop it into your Henrietta or Chester or Charlie, whichever one you're going to have a go at making. And if you've got a pokey stick, just push that really smart and tight into the corners. When I did the pincushion version, I did put a little bit more stuffing in because I wanted it quite firm. But for the Henrietta, we decided that a weight was also necessary, like we did for Rodney the reindeer. So once you've got most of your stuffing in, I just put together a little bag of rice, if you can spare it, in one of those sealed bags you can just seal up, and I pop that inside Henrietta. Just make sure it's surrounded by stuffing so that you won't actually be able to feel the weight at all on the bag, and then you'll end up with something that looks a bit like that. Now draw the two edges together and match up the seams, and because you've already turned down that top edge, your finger pressed in 1/4 of an inch, that will then come together quite nicely, and you're aiming to get that seam matching up. And once you've done that, just pop a couple more pins in to hold it shut all the way along the top, so you'll end up with something like that. Now to secure this, we're going to just do a little bit of hand stitching in a matching thread, and all I want you to do is just do some hemming stitches along there to seal up the opening, and that goes all the way along. And if we have a look at Charlie, you can see that was hand hemmed to seal him up all the way along. I also added onto this one of these little sewing ribbons, and this one actually says "So Very Happy." It's just something that I decided to just pop it in there. You'll also notice from Charlie and Chester that they actually use two different fabrics, similar fabrics but different. So you could have a go at that if you want to, but for Henrietta I'm just sticking to two squares that are exactly the same. Now once your seam at the back is sewn up, your next thing to do is to make the decoration. So we're now going to add some legs, and for this all we needed was a piece of cord that's about 14 inches long. Fold it in half so you can find the centre, give it a little bit of a crease, and then tip Henrietta up so that you can actually see the underneath seam, and position this about 2 centimetres down from the point. And all I'm going to do is get a pin at this stage, and I'm just going to fix that in place. Later on, well, the next thing for you to do would be to actually do a few hand stitches to hold that there, but that's just down from the point, about 1/2 inch to 2 centimetres. Could be a little bit more if you don't want the legs quite so long, that's totally up to you, but I'm just putting a pin in just to hold it in place to start off with. Then when we turn her flat down like that, there you can see her legs coming out at the front. Next thing to do is to give her the knobbly knees, so just do a very loose knot about halfway down each leg, and the same on the other side. Oops, that one that's moving up a little bit more. Before you pull them a little bit tight. There you go. That's her 2 knobbly knees. And for the feet, I just cut some shapes out of felt and I just glued them on, but they could be hand stitched in place. So that's that little bit there. Last thing to do then is to just add the eyes. So it was a small button, and just hand sew them on. I'm just putting a pin through them just so that you can see and get the position. And there we have it. That's our first online workshop for making Henrietta Hen or her family of chicks. I hope you have a great time having a go at these. Please let us know what your results are by posting some pictures, and let's see how many we can make. Bye for now.